You are listening to the Landon and Jeff Show, exclusively on DolphinsTalk.com. And now, here are your hosts, Landon and Jeff.
Welcome to the Landon and Jeff Show. I'm Landon.
And I'm Landon's dad, Jeff. And Landon, this is one of the last podcasts you're going to do as a 13-year-old.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of sad to say, because that's like one of your trademark sayings.
I know that I'm going to have to start saying that this is, because this will not be the only podcast to hear the saying and the thoughts on the Miami Dolphins from a 13-year-old, because I'm going to have to change it. But I think I can do the math, and I'll be okay in a couple weeks.
Yeah, something you can comment is how many times my dad's going to mess that up and say 13.
That's true. Well, the answer is probably going to be more than most people would think, because it should be pretty simple. Well, Landon, the Dolphins have a bye this week, which is good because this week they will not be losing. But let's talk about last week's game against the Los Angeles Chargers. Notice after 3 years, I'm not going to make that mistake anymore and call them the San Diego Chargers, even though I live here in San Diego. What were your thoughts on the game?
You know, it looks like Josh Rosen had a good game. He looks like the only one that was able to play a decent game of football. And you know what? He did play really good. He made our receivers look really good. On the way to a soccer practice I had, me and my friends watched a drop compilation of Miami Dolphins, and the list just kept going on of drops. We lead the league in most dropped passes, and I feel like if that wasn't the case, I feel like we would have had a better chance against the Chargers because we played really well in the first half.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're seeing is it was kind of fun for the first half. And look, there was no time that I thought we were going to win the game. There was no time I even thought we were going to cover that crazy spread. But at the end of the day, Landon, even if Rosen plays lights out, they're drafting a quarterback at the start of the first round next year. So Rosen, who knows what his future is going to be. But there were some plays, like you mentioned the drops, there were some plays that he threw that just kind of made you smile. And at least it kind of gave me hope that everyone hasn't given up. Because, look, we have the Jets coming up. We have the Redskins coming up. Those are winnable games. So maybe we will get a win this year before you turn 15. Maybe we can actually get a win, right?
Well, I just don't want to go 0-16. But then I guarantee there'll be things all over the internet saying how we went 16-0. Now we're 0-16.
Yeah, well, 17-0 was the perfect season in 72 before even I was born. We don't want that on it. We want to at least. I really would like to beat the Redskins. I think that's the game that I kind of have earmarked that hopefully we should be able to do. Because coming off the bye, you should be as prepared as you can be. So let's talk about some of the other specifics. They had to start another crazy offensive line because of injuries. Rosen just doesn't have any time. Kenyon Drake and Balaj, there were some issues definitely there in the running backs. Preston Williams and Devontae actually had a pretty decent game. What were some of your thoughts on the offense other than Rosen, because you already kind of mentioned him?
I think our running backs, you can definitely tell they're not receiving backs. But when Kenyon Drake was able to catch the ball, and he was able to make a couple people miss, and he was one of the better players in terms of like rack yardage and just being decent overall this week, which was good to see. As you mentioned, Devontae Parker, he had himself a beyond decent game, and I think that's all you can say. But I think it definitely wasn't our worst performance this season.
No, it definitely wasn't, and that was getting better. Landon, it's just we know what this year is now, right? We know, and Coach Flores can say it's on him and the team to prepare them better. They don't have the depth. They don't have the talent. It's really going to be hard for them to get more than a couple wins. But I did like the fighting spirit. Defensively, I enjoyed the way that Raekwon McMillan played. I get what people are saying, and Armando Salguero has been writing about this, that, you drafted him in the second round to be a 3-down back, and he's turned into a 2-down back because he can't cover anybody. At least he's a better 2-down back than some of the other guys we've had in the past. So sort of happy there. Wilkins got that dumb penalty for kind of slamming a guy down that looked like a move out of the World Wrestling, entertainment group more than the NFL. But Wilkins got better this week, but he's certainly not been someone who has been dominating games by any stretch of the imagination. And how about Taco Charlton, Landon? Taco Charlton, 2 games, 2 sacks.
Yeah, he was a pretty high round draft pick, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he was a first-round pick, Cowboys' first-round pick.
And I remember he used to be a beast in Madden. That's how I know who he is. And if he continues this, he could actually turn out to be a pretty good free agent pickup.
Yeah, well, he was cut by the Cowboys, so it was nice to see us pick him up and that he's performing. It does really make me question this Charles Harris pick. And Landon, this is kind of the big topic of conversation as we're into the bye week, because, I don't know how much more about this game we need to break down. All we're doing is acquiring picks. Yet, if you look at what Chris Greer's done, and I get it, they brought in Reggie McKenzie and they brought in Allen from Buffalo to really help the other voices. But, we certainly didn't hit on the Charles Harris pick. The Gesicki pick looks pretty bad right now. Raekwon, if you argue that a second rounder, ending up as a 2-down linebacker is not what you want to do. This is the guy, Landon, who's been in charge of these last 4 drafts, yet he's going to be in charge of all these picks. We've got to nail these picks. What confidence level do you have right now in this front office?
Well, it kind of depends, right? Obviously, we're not the best at picking draft picks. However, I feel like our draft picks are going to be so high, they're going to be near you can't miss range. Now, second and third round picks, those always worry me, because I feel like we haven't hit on one of those in forever.
Well, Xavier Howard we hit, bud. Howard was a second rounder. That was a hit.
But later rounds, I feel like we've really struggled in. Obviously, like your 6th, 7th, and you could even classify 5th, maybe 4th, are just complete just guesses and hopes. You just see good effort and kind of pick people from that.
But if you look at our last 3 first, but if you look at our first round picks, Laramie Tunsil traded, Minkah Fitzpatrick traded, Charles Harris, you don't want to call him a bust yet because he's still on the team, but it's not trending in the right direction. And even Wilkins this year is certainly not, stepping in and dominating the NFL. It just worries me. What I worry about with Tua, and we're going to say this for the next 6 months, is he has such a superior offensive line to any other college defensive line they're going up against, with the exception of 1 or 2 programs, which he hasn't faced yet. He has far superior receivers. He has 2 locks for the NFL, where some college teams don't have any cornerbacks who are going to be in the NFL. How do you judge how good he is, Landon? How do you know that Tua is potentially the guy? I mean, his numbers are off the charts. I also don't know how tall he is when they really measure him. I know they list him at 6'1", but let's see how tall he really is. You can't mess this up.
Yeah, I agree. That's why part of the reason why everyone was saying Daniel Jones was so bad was because of his highlight tape. But he's kind of having the similar in a similar situation as Josh Rosen is currently, where he has 0 talent around him. Maybe a couple of defensive players, like he had Josh Allen, we have Xavier Howard. But it's literally like bare bones. And that's why I figured, after watching him play, most of his incompletions weren't his fault. And he actually looked pretty good considering he had 0 time whatsoever. So I think, it's really hard to judge college players. And you really have to evaluate players. You can't just say, oh, he's playing well, he's on the good team, let's pick him. Because it goes deeper than that. And people like Tom Brady, he wasn't a first-round pick that everyone figured that would be great. Yes, he's an exception, but still, you really have to evaluate everyone.
Yeah, well, like I said, my fear with Tua right now is I don't know how you evaluate a guy who it's almost like they're not even on the same playing field as some of the other guys that he's playing. So we'll just have to kind of see where that goes. I haven't watched any Oregon games, so I haven't seen Herbert play. I saw Burrow from LSU, but he's not going to be a top 2 pick. I haven't seen Herbert play. I do need to try to find it. What I am finding, Landon, is on Saturday when I'm trying to debate what college football game to watch. If Alabama's on, I'm always going to try to watch a few minutes of it just because I want to see Tua. And what I see looks amazing. I mean, he does look great. But again, I just don't know, what else is going to be able to, compare him with, because it's just so difficult for me to tell. But that's really the million-dollar question, Landon. And then we saw Chris Greer attended the Alabama game again this weekend. So he's watching him in person, and I'm assuming he's talking to the right people, and we can just kind of figure it out as we go, right, pal?
Yeah, I completely agree. If you put the worst quarterback in the NFL in a flag football league, of course he's going to dominate. and that's a similar, at least I think is a similar comparison. But it's good to see that we are really looking at him and seriously considering him and making sure we don't screw this up.
Boy, Landon, I'm sure all the teams that Alabama's played so far, you just compared their opponents to flag football. I'm sure they're loving you right now.
I mean, that's what everyone does to the Dolphins. So.
I know. It's really sad. So tell me about this. You know, you're in middle school right now. You're in 8th grade. What do your friends say to you about the fact that have you worn Dolphins jerseys to school this year, or are you just not doing it at all?
No, I've completely avoided that. I actually have some. I've been told how many wins the Fins have. 0. I've been told that we haven't scored, or this was a little a while ago, and it said it was last week. It said the Dolphins have scored 16 points this year, and the Dolphins are officially an NCAA team.
Ouch. Your friends are not being very nice to you.
No, it's one person.
No, one person. Well, your friend is not being very nice to you. I will tell you, Landon, that ESPN did a great story where they listed the most tortured fan bases in all of sports, and I felt especially proud because Padres fans, Landon, were actually listed as number 1, the most tortured franchise in all of sports. They have just completed their 13th season in a row without a playoff berth, their 9th season in a row with a losing record. As some of you may know, I'm a Padres season ticket holder. And then the Dolphins were Landon listed as the 7th, most tortured fan base, even though I would argue that San Diego and Miami were winning in the weather category. So at least we have that going for us.
Yeah, if we're going to bring into other sports into the equation with teams that just aren't doing so well, the Tottenham Hotspurs just lost 7-2. So that's always fun whenever you have soccer practice.
Yeah, no, you're definitely not in a good run. So how does it make you feel? What's your reaction hearing that ESPN said the Dolphins are the 7th out of most tortured, fan base? Because obviously the last world title was in 1973. So that's certainly not recent history. What do you think about, we've gone quarterback after quarterback since Marino left. What do you think about that sort of statement?
Well, what you have to realize is I haven't known any better. I've never liked a good football team. I've never liked a good sports team for that matter. And it's just kind of been normalized to lose and switch players and coaches often. I've never had like the team like the Patriots or like the Broncos who occasionally do well or formerly did anyway.
No.
Like I've never had that experience of being like a fan of a winning team. So I have no idea what that's like. I actually was recently thinking, what happens when your team wins? Like, what do you do? I was genuinely like thinking like, yes, you celebrate, but what goes on from that? Congrats, you won. But like, I don't know. It's kind of confusing me because I've never been in that situation.
Well, hopefully, Landon, one day we'll be able to celebrate a bunch of world titles for all of our teams. But you're right. Right now, we're kind of in a down period. All right, I want to get to a couple other things before we wrap up the show because this is the bye week, so the bye week shows are always going to be a little bit shorter. Let's talk jerseys right now. So the Dolphins have come out with a couple different looks. They had the throwback whites. They've had the new white jersey. They've had the old. They've had the new turquoise jersey. What is your favorite combination that the Dolphins have worn this year and why?
Ooh, I might have to go with the throwback white one.
Yeah, those are my favorites so far.
I like white jerseys. I would never buy one because like it just gets so dirty so easily. But I think they look so cool. And
yeah,
I think
they definitely look pretty good.
Whenever you can wear a throwback jersey, it's when your team was decent. It's always good.
Yeah, no, for sure. That was actually pretty exciting for me to see.
Was that your favorite
sort of
too?
Those? Yeah. I think it's not even close. I mean, I just think the Dolphins jerseys in those whites, Landon, just are such good looking jerseys and just really is sort of the class. I would almost say that's the class of the NFL right now.
Yeah, it could be worse. We could have the worst jerseys in the league. If you want to remember a bad jersey, you can remember the old neon green Seahawks one. That one was the worst.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. I wasn't a big fan of that.
I mean, granted, we had the creamsicle, but I kind of
yeah,
like.
we did. You like those orange jerseys?
Yeah.
All right. So, and let me ask you the last question before we get into our picks. If you had to pick a current player, which jersey would you be going with this week?
If I knew he wasn't going to be replaced, it would be Josh Rosen.
Yeah, but that factors in. You can't pick Rosen because we know we're getting a quarterback.
Yeah. And then, I'm assuming the rule of no duplicates applies.
Well, I mean, the only duplicate you'd be able to get is Xavier Howard. I mean, I wouldn't be upset if you said I'd wanted the throwback Xavier Howard because at least that's a guy who's going to be there.
Yeah. Trying to think, yeah. Devontae Parker had a good week, but who knows what's going to happen with him. Christian Wilkins
I'm not letting you get
that explosive start.
Devontae Parker jersey. Yeah, I wouldn't be against Wilkins. But do you really want a defensive tackles? That's where it's so hard. To me, I think your answer had the answer I wrote down, which was Xavier Howard in the throwback white. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so let's talk about our picks, Landon. We're having the worst pick season ever, Mike included with us.
God, yeah.
We got one game right. He also got one game right, so we maintained our lead. So we need to pick 3 games going into week 5. Lucky for you, Landon, I was in Las Vegas for work earlier this week, so I have absolutely no information that'll help me out. But I am interested to see which picks that you want to make this week.
Okay, so there's been a couple of things I've been doing. I've been making the mistake of choosing the simply just better team.
Yeah.
I've also been made the mistake of doing that without realizing who's on my fantasy team. So whenever I would pick a team and they would lose, it would hurt my fantasy team. So I'm going to try and stay away with that. That being said, I don't have any Giants, so I'm going to pick the Giants over the Vikings. I'm going to ride on what the same friend criticizing the Dolphins calls Danny Dimes.
Yeah, that's what everyone calls it. The Giants are +5 points.
Yeah, they didn't look half bad, and the Vikings looked awful versus the Bears. Then you also have the 2 defeated teams. I'm going to choose the Cardinals over the Bengals. I think the Bengals are just awful. And the Cardinals, in the games they've lost, they haven't looked too bad. Their defense is atrocious, but their offense hasn't looked too bad.
Okay, so the Cardinals are getting 3.5 points. So you're taking all underdogs this week. Kind of an interesting strategy that you're putting together.
I mean, I've done the exact opposite the rest of the time. All
right, well, I'm going to pick the third game, right? Because I get to pick that one?
Yeah, I was going to say the other weeks it just hasn't worked out.
I'm going to take the Chargers, who are -6.5 at home against the Broncos. I think the Broncos are really bad.
Yeah. Yep, that was my third choice, especially after that humiliating choke against the Jags.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. All right, Landon.
Everyone was loving it here.
Yeah, that's true. Any final thoughts on this bye week edition that you want to get out there before we wrap this one up?
Not really.
All right. Well, next week's a big week for us, bud, because we will be going up against the Redskins in week 6, and that's one of the few possibilities for a win. So that's an important game for us to watch. Why don't you take this podcast to the finish line?
Okay. I'm Landon.
And I am Landon's dad, Jeff. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we will see you next week on the Landon and Jeff Show.